There we go. We are recording, so let's go.
Okay, perfect. All right, so Alexis and I are both members of HRAC, the Human Rights Activist Coterie in Spokane, and we are both going to kind of like co-host this. We've both reached out to some people on both like the city council, county commissioner side of things, and activists like NAACP and SCAR, and not everybody is here right now, but that's why we're recording. So we are going to do a survey after this. We're going to send out like a Google form survey. So if you could put your email address in the chat box, that would be great. We want to kind of gauge how people are feeling, both, after like getting some more information about this, both like city and county officials and activists, and kind of use that data moving forward to make some more decisions. So, Alexis, do you have anything before we move on to Ernie and Athena?
I don't think so. I think that the survey will tell us a lot about how the community feels about this movement, and I have a lot of hope that we can make a meeting spot in the middle where it works well for the police and for the community. And I think that's all. Thank you guys for being here.
Okay, so if Ernie and Athena, if you guys want to give us some more information, and then we'll do like some questions after that.
Sure. So a little bit of background about myself. I've been a police officer for 28 years. I'm currently employed with the San Antonio Police Department, and I helped establish their mental health unit back in 2008. So I had to learn a lot of the logistics of what it takes to set up a specialized unit and then how to sustain one as well. In addition to that, I also train all the officers within the state of Texas in crisis intervention training, which I know Spokane has had crisis intervention training. However, what myself and Athena did was we actually met, we're consulting with another company on the side, and that's how we met. And in talking with each other, I was listening to her background and what her training is, and I'll let her explain that here in just a moment. But coupled with mental health and de-escalation, with the importance of social intelligence, what we determined and what we found was that this type of training doesn't necessarily make a department a softer, gentler type of department. It makes them a smarter department, right? And it doesn't mean less tactical. It actually means more tactical without the approach of force. A lot of that can be mitigated through a lot of courses that we teach. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to talk to everyone here and kind of explain a little bit about what we do. But I'll let Athena talk a little bit about like her background and why I think it's important that we have these conversations.
Hi, everybody. So I trained Green Berets in the military, profiling them for the job, eliminating who should be there and who shouldn't through different psychological tests and different ways of training, where we would go and do this for 2 weeks at a time, playing role play to make it real, right? Not in a classroom setting. And I did that for a number of years and then rolled over to doing that in the corporate world. What we teach is how to communicate universally through the laws of body language, tone of voice, micro expressions, mirroring other people, which builds rapport, whether or not you come from the same culture, speak the same language, whether you're trying to sell something from a business and you want to have a good relationship. You could be a real estate agent, a salesperson, a police officer. A Green Beret is not I don't want to say normal soldier, but they're not a foot soldier, and they're not being trained to be they are trained in tactical maneuvers, but they are supposed to not infiltrate, but blend in with the towns that they go to and make friends with the natives. And they know they're not in an entirely safe environment. But that is what they're trained to do. And so that kind of training is social intelligence. It's learning to blend, it's learning to build rapport. And so combining that with Ernie's expertise in law enforcement is kind of combining that corporate and law enforcement world that have been separated for so long and bringing us into what everybody needs, which is the ability to interact with each other, especially police that need to be able to build better trust and rapport within their communities. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I was noticing with our CIT. The Spokane Police Department did release a video earlier this year talking about our behavioral health units. And one of the things that I noticed in the video is how they address people with disabilities, in a sense that I think we're on the right track, but I think there's a lot more we could learn and we could use some help with. For instance, in the video, they talk about training people with mental health disabilities how to interact and how to speak with law enforcement. And Spokane seems to be putting the onus on the person with the disability when it should be on the police officer. The police officer is the one that needs to learn to talk with the person with the disability. And so that's where I can kind of see that we could use help with. And we can enhance the training that we already have. And I think Ernie and Athena can definitely help with that. Reading through the catalog, Kate, I don't know if you got the catalog from their training, but there is so much in here that is amazing to go through, and where they're talking about just, you know, body language and facial expressions and just how to de-escalate. And there's a whole lot more in there. So I think it's something that is definitely needed in Spokane.
And I mean, it is helpful, absolutely, for mental health, but truly it's teaching you how to interact with people and in high intensity situations, right? I mean, Green Berets aren't interacting with people that are just, you know, getting along with them. So it's how do you interact with people that may already have a negative impression, or you're walking into a negative scenario and you want to turn it positively, right? It's teaching, it gives you actual exercises and techniques that take time. So you drive up on a scene, we hear a lot about police moving really quickly, right? And the next thing you know, it's just gone downhill in 15 seconds. What happened? And so this helps police officers not only defend their own actions externally, but internally. So why am I making this next decision? Why am I? And that way, later on, when you say, why did you do that? They can explain, but also as they're explaining that to themselves, they're making different decisions as they go through those steps. They now know what is happening with that person that they're talking to. Their body language tells you a lot more than the words that they say.
Yeah, and I think the training, one of the things when I'm talking with the police officers around our town is that, you know, they're worried about taking away, for lack of a better term, the macho part of being a cop, because this is more touchy-feely. In this type of training that Silk offers, it's in addition to the training they already have, it makes them a better officer. And it's a great addition to our current CIT, but it's also a healthy addition to our community because it makes everybody safer. And it really helps the police officers, because one of the things it addresses is we have in our nation a pretty high suicide rate among our police officers. And so the training isn't just about our citizens, but it's also about our police officers and making a healthy environment for them in their department as well.
Yeah, Jim, thank you for bringing that up, because you just gave 228 good reasons, right? Because that's the number of officers that committed suicide last year. The CIT training, I created the curriculum down here in Texas. It was based off the Memphis model, but then you always have to take your CIT model, and you have to mold it to what is available within your community. So a lot of the CIT courses and none of them are the same. They're all different. Some of them are 16 hours long. Some of them are 40 hours long. It just depends what you're going to get based on the manpower that you have to teach it, what the state recommends. But I think what's important about how we differentiate ourselves from normal CIT training is because I've created that curriculum. I know what's missing as well, because we only have 40 hours to teach really what is which is a semester college course, basically in Introduction to Psychology, right? So what was missing for us, and I would love Athena to address this, is why do officers respond the way they do? And maybe they don't understand that because they don't understand their own biases. So what we did was Athena brought a great course on unconscious biases in. We coupled that with adverse childhood experiences for trauma so that the officers can understand more about themselves so they can change the way that the interactions start taking place with citizen encounters so you have more positive outcomes. And I think that was a huge part that's being missed in the basic CIT courses that are being taught today.
Yeah, so the way that we teach, so schemas are the hardest thing in the world to break. It's really, really difficult to break through schemas, and all biases come from schemas. So trying to overcome bias is really difficult, right? And we know that because it's been that way since the beginning of time. Why? And so what works usually for this more macho group, I think for anyone, but it really cuts through, is the science behind it. The social science of how schemas, we all have them. There's no one that isn't biased. So I can't address racial bias without addressing bias first. Bias affects everything from religion to politics. It's so many different things. Do you like sunny days? I mean, people have. Why? Let's give you the science behind this. Once you understand that, you're using rational reasons to say, okay, maybe I have a bias. Maybe I do, because if this is scientific, I guess I could see how this got created. From there, we use the universal language. So bias is, you have this schema. It's a cognitive framework for how you see the world. And then you have different cultures. Well, guess what overrides culture for the most part, 99%, is social science. It's evolutionary psychology. Humans all make the same movements to mean the same things. They just do. There are micro expressions that you can't fake. There are different things you can do that says, trust me, right? And it's meant. And so what we do is, after you understand the science of schemas and how they're caused, we then give you actual tools and techniques using body language, mirror neurons, tone and cadence of your voice, micro expressions, and different motions that you may not know exactly what you've been saying, right? Because most people are not aware of what they're really feeling versus what they're saying out loud. And when they're incongruent, you don't trust the person in front of you. It's how it works. So when you learn, oh, maybe I have a bias. Now, if I don't know if I have one, but I use nonverbal communication correctly, I will come across as being open and not having a bias. You will know that I want to establish trust and that I am open and listening. And so rather than just teaching people what bias is, we want to give them tools to overcome it and aha moments to realize they're doing it. So there's a lot of examples where a lot of our students eventually understand, they'll see themselves do something and realize it was a bias. And once you start catching yourself in them, it becomes easier to be aware of them and break those from the cycle. So it's a very difficult thing to overcome, but all of our courses that we teach end up tying back to this, because everything from mental health, racial injustice, to just simply building rapport in a neighborhood that maybe you don't know the culture. So, or maybe they already have a negative impression of you. And so this is just something that we lace through our program. We have a course on it, and then we lace it through the rest of the classes.
Kate, what are your feelings on the training we have in law enforcement right now in Spokane?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess I'm coming at this from a totally different angle. I'm just going to be completely honest. I feel like trainings are just a half step, because when you have power, like the power that officers have, low income people in poverty and people of color lose out no matter what. You know, the fact that they can take everyone's rights away by cuffing them and throwing them in jail is the inevitable problem. I mean, the entire system of our police forces are racist in and of itself. And so I'm definitely looking for bigger solutions. I think I just don't see trainings as a way to help this problem, because even with the trainings we have with our officers, like, we still have problems, right? You know, their solution, like the Cahoots model in Eugene, Oregon, is really a cool program that they have. And I'd like us to start implementing things like, instead of a police force, we have, you know, less police force, because we're always going to need some sort of form of police, right? Like the way that we are now, we're going to need it. But a medical department that works with exactly what you're talking about, Athena, people who are trained in the medical field, and doctors and nurses and those type of things that go to addiction overdoses, and people on the street who have been chronically homeless for 10, 20 years and are, you know, kind of losing it because they've been on the street for so long. And so those type of things. And then a fire department that becomes our emergency department for health related issues and fire related issues and things like that. I just think we need to steer in a different direction. But by no means am I saying that you all shouldn't be doing this, because my solution can't come true without your solution as well, if that makes sense, right? We're not going to be able to just get rid of all police tomorrow. That's not going to happen. So, like, I guess I am striving for something a little bit stronger, or pushing for a little bit something more, but that doesn't mean that what you guys are doing is wrong by any means, and we need it at this point in time. And so, you know, I just have, you know, limited time, limited space to push things. And sorry.
Right. No, you're telling us that, but you're being nice. But I wanted to suggest there is another aspect to what we do too. And it's a bigger picture solution. And I just thought maybe I'd tell you about it in case. So 2 things. One, I'm a profiler as part of my job. It's what I did, was profile. I'm not a doctor. In my experience doing this, doctors and nurses they tend to have the book smarts, but not the social intelligence. And what police need more than what anyone needs for responding to calls that are crisis related, not just in a hospital setting, right, is social intelligence skills. So Ernie and I have set up an assessment. So 2 things. One, we have an assessment where when we go in, what we'd love to do is train the field training officers and eliminate new recruits that are not a good fit for this type of role, right? Like, be much more careful about who gets into the program. So we can assess who's there now, put everybody back through this training is really different. I promise. I know training is kind of run of the mill. This one isn't, but they go back through it. And Ernie and I can assess. I mean, I can do profiles that explain why someone would not be a good fit for this position, right? And try to rebuild. Now, the other part of that solution is, the military has an X-ray program for special forces, and something similar to this for the police, which is, let's say you want to be a Green Beret later in life. You don't want to be a foot soldier in the infantry for 5 to 7 years before you can do that. Maybe you even have advanced degrees and you'd like to do this, right? You go in on a special program. If you don't complete the program, you do owe time to the military as a foot soldier. But if you do, you go in, and that's where their best soldiers come through to be special forces. It's a blend, but that's where a lot of them come through. We could really change police culture by allowing, I mean, 27 would be a great bottom age for police, but we can't just eliminate everyone right now, right? But if we brought in seasoned adults that have a variety of different careers and gave them a 6-month to a year training that's very intense, and they could skip being a beat cop. I don't even know the correct word for that. I'm sorry, Ernie, what is the right word for that? But that way you could start to change leadership, because this would be an advanced level coming in, right, after a serious training session. So I just wanted to mention that, because we really are trying to think of bigger outside the box solutions combined with a really different type of training.
Yeah, I hear that. Just one of the things that came up when I was thinking about that was we have a program that we got a grant from the state called True Blood. Are you guys familiar with that? Basically, we send a medical professional out with an officer, and they're the ones that are the first responders to that medical attention that I was talking about at the very beginning, where if somebody is, chronically ill, chronically homeless, on the street, talking to themselves, maybe they're causing some trouble, whatever, this unit would go to that person, right? So it's really great because we have it's a really high rate of not putting people into prison, getting people the medical attention they need, getting them, so it's basically like a diversion, right, to jail, which is like really great. But then in my mind, I'm like, why do we even have the officer there? Because that's costing us twice as much money. And most of these interactions are not scary for that medical professional, because they're trained to deal with people who are going through episodes and all that kind of stuff. And so are there going to be people who need an officer? For sure. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we're never going to need them. I think there are other solutions to that I would like to put my time to, which are like, getting those hiring more of those medical professionals, hiring more of an outreach team, social workers and caseworkers and case managers, because I just feel like inevitably the system of police culture is racist. It started because they wanted to take Black people who were not slaves anymore and put them in prison. And so you can't really undo that racism. That's just there. And if we keep going along with this system, there's always going to be disproportionality and inequities. So that's just my stance. But by no means, I think your training is really great, and I think we need it in a time like now for sure. I'm just saying that my capital and push is for these big systematic changes, because I can't see us going forward with the culture and the police system that we have today, because we've been dealing with this since they started, So I'm just not seeing this embedded culture be undone by a bunch of trainings, because for instance, I have a friend who totally like Bernie Krat, like total socialist, like all this stuff, couldn't find a job. So he went in to become a sheriff, and he's a sheriff, and was struggling real hard with the Black Lives Matter stuff, right? This guy who was on the front line with me at every march and protest I ever did is now like, anymore. I'm scared for my life, which rightfully so. Not saying he's wrong. He has that truth in his life. But the fact of the matter is his entire worldview has changed because he is now an officer. And that culture is inevitably impossible to change with the system we have set up. And that's what I am working on. And so just wanted to be really honest. I'm pretty open, and so yeah.
That. And I do think no matter what though, that person going on the call, I'm sorry, but knowing how to deal with episodes isn't the same as social intelligence. And when you're on the street, Cops go to calls where you actually have to talk to people, right? It's not always medical, and you don't know if it's medical before you show up. And I can let, or you don't know if it's going to be, what is it? Are they have a mental illness, or is it something else, right? Social intelligence is needed either way. And I appreciate what you're saying about the culture. I think one way to really break up that culture fast, because I don't know how many medical professionals will take that. Hey, we need to change that, right? But social intelligence training, incorporating people in our community that are not police officers, that haven't been and don't have any tie to that community, and infiltrating them into the middle, mid-level as leadership, could be a way to help create what you're looking for, which is a big culture change within there. I think it needs to be shooken up multiple ways. People coming in and something infiltrating into the middle of it at the same time, right? It's a little hard to only bring in medical professionals without also doing something to the inside and together. Ernie, what?
Yeah, if I could respond to your about Cahoots. I'm very familiar with Cahoots. We have it here in Bexar County. We also have another initiative called SMART, which is the Sheriff's Multidisciplinary Alternative Response Team. I work in a hybrid system called the Program for Intensive Care Coordination, which I helped develop. So what it is I'm teamed up with a licensed professional counselor, a paramedic, and a peer specialist. And we go out to these calls. The reason you have to have a police officer here in the city of San Antonio in the state of Texas to go out on these mental health calls is by law, statutorily, they're the only ones that have the authority, other than a judge, magistrate, parent, or guardian, to execute what's called an involuntary commitment or an emergency detention. So I don't know what the laws are in Washington state. That's probably why police officers are still having to respond to this, because they're still required to complete the paperwork for the mental health assessment, I'm assuming. Now, what you can do not only is advance the training that we're talking about, but legislation is one that you can address if you're looking at taking the officers out of the process of doing the involuntary commitment. The only issue with that is, and I've sat on many boards there that reviewed that policy, is they wanted to allow the hospitals to do it, but there was a conflict of interest, because if a patient was funded, all of a sudden that patient was going to get treatment. And if a patient wasn't funded, they were going to be stabilized and released. So there's some checks and balances that you got to put in place there. And the police officers, kind of like the third party removed, doesn't matter if you have insurance or not. Now, those officers that are responding, and I looked at the process in which Spokane is doing it, you have a decent model there. You're making strides in the right direction. And I've seen other cities do this. But I also believe there's some areas that you can improve in, right? The way I'm dressed right now is the way I go to work. I don't wear a uniform. I'm not showing up use of force. I'll show my badge and I'll put it away. And my name is my first name. And my first words out of my mouth is, I'm just here to help you. So the social intelligence being brought in with the buzzword that law enforcement likes to hear, like procedural justice, we tie all this together and you will get better police officers. The culture is difficult to change. Trust me, I know. I've been in this, and to create a mental health unit in a bureaucracy that doesn't like change was pushing a rock uphill. But you know what? I did it. So it can change. It can change if you have the right mindset and the right focus and the right energy. Spokane right now has the energy. I feel it. I talked to Jim. You want change. You want the pendulum to swing. And I think we can help with that. You know, regardless whether you have questions about police officers being involved in mental health, I definitely think there's areas where they can be removed, very easily removed in some of the areas. However, we've seen some bad really fast, and now you've got civilians that have been in a place of serious bodily injury. So I create policy, I create procedure and sustainability for these types of programs. So that's something I'd be happy to offer, for assistance.
Anne Marie, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I did that. So I hope that the councilwoman's question is for addressed.
We're having a real hard time hearing you. You're kind of breaking up. If you want to text me the question, or you can try again. Yeah, I'm not hearing her. Maybe she can message me the question or something. One thing I wanted to bring up real quick, and I hope I'm not stepping on anybody's toes here. I want to give everybody a chance to talk, so let me know if you need, whatever you want to do. But one of the things I want to bring up is that what brought me to this this movement of trying to improve our relationship with police officers and change things in the culture of policing, like I said, was my best friend was killed in 2017. And that was very traumatic to me, to my children. He was like an uncle to my kids. He was the best man at my wedding. And then I started looking around, and here in Spokane, Debbie Novak's son, David, was killed in 2019, January 7th, 2019. He had not committed a crime. He did not have a weapon on him. It was really sad. And part of it is because police officers are rushing in and they're not reading the situation. And that is really what we really need here. We need our police officers to slow down. The whole de-escalation from Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission, where they talk about de-escalation, where you've got your time, distance, cover, and communication. These are the 4 elements of de-escalation in their program, and we're not doing that. On May 4th, 2019, Ethan Murray was killed in Spokane Valley. He did not commit a crime, and he had no weapon on him. He had a mental disability. He was scared, running from a police officer who was chasing. We don't know why he was chasing Ethan through the woods. So when Ethan turned around, because the police officer was yelling at him to stop and turn around, the police officer got scared and unloaded his gun into him, killing Ethan. So this is why I think this is what drew me to Ernie, because watching the documentary, I can see how we are here in Spokane, how we're causing so much heartache, and we're so much trauma to these families and friends. And it's been 3 years for me, and I still get choked up, and I want it to stop. And part of it is when I see what Ernie has to offer, we need to get our police officers to get off of this alpha mentality, this alpha posturing. We need them to slow down and remember they're helpers. And I really think what Ernie and Athena can do with our police officers to show them, hey, first of all, start reading the people, slow down, communicate is what we really need. And we're just not doing that. Sorry for my soapbox.
Can I speak just for a minute,
real
Jen?
quick? I know Debbie has to leave.
I just wanted to say that, or to add on to that, did you guys see where, I believe it was a Spokane police officer, was in an incident just a few days ago where a man was suicidal. I believe he had a stick or had something, I'm not sure. But anyway, it was a very escalated situation, and the police officer spent 4 hours talking to the guy. I don't remember ever hearing that, and if somebody else can correct me on that, or I haven't heard that in a long, long, long time. My point is, a life is worth 4 hours. That young man or that man has a mother, a father, he's got family, he's got people that loves him. He's a human being. A life deserves, and they were able to talk the guy down, and first it was very escalated, and there was a lot going on. So, and I wish I had more information about it. I've just been so busy this week, but the police officer spent 4 hours, they said on the news, with the guy. So we need to see more of that. And it makes me wonder, did that particular police officer do that because of what's going on right now in Spokane, and because of the new environment where people aren't going to tolerate that anymore? We do need to have the tools and the environment for these police officers to make change. And it's not that way right now. you know, if I'm going to venture to say that if a police officer in Spokane right now tried to make changes, you know, more along what Ernie's talking about, your work environment becomes a not very pleasant place to work. You know, and again, I say this because I used to work for the police department, not as a patrol officer, but as a dispatcher. But I was on patrol a lot. I went a lot. And, you know, you've got to fit into the group. So this is just a very big challenge in front of all of us, you know, and it's not only educating the police officers, but the public too, because Jim and Anwar and Emily, I think you were there too. I remember back this summer when we were down at the courthouse doing a protest, and Ozzy Knevinich led a group of about 200 people down there, and their big thing that they were screaming across the street at us was we wanted to defund their police department, and that we wouldn't have any police, and that we better not be calling 911 because, you know, the people don't understand. But then Ozzy was encouraging that, you know, because he would lead the group there. They had just had a meeting before the group came down. So, you know, so there needs to be a lot of change here. And of course, it's not going to happen overnight, but I think Ernie and Joe is a beginning point, or this crisis intervention training is a beginning point. And Kate, I totally agree with everything you're saying. You know, people are misreading what defund means. And of course, defund's not a very good title for it or name for it. You know, we're in the 21st century, things need to change. We need to have individual units somehow, and how in the world we go about doing all that, I don't know. I know it's going to take a lot of work. And again, we have to work on changing, you know, the general public as well as not just the police officers, and what that all means and how that's going to play out. So.
Debbie, thank you. I just wanted to mention that's actually something Ernie and I focus on is it doesn't matter how long it takes. Ernie's told me that it was one of the first things I actually said when we started was, well, what, and I started being told by police officers that they have a backup of log calls and they're being rushed to the next thing and they're supposed to get out of there. And so we're not only teaching the officers time, you stay where you're at, you focus where you're at, you ignore every next call coming in. That's for dispatch to figure out, right? And you're in the present moment, as well as training leadership on the same thing. Don't rush them. They tell you they're still on that job, they're still on that job, right? You'll hear, so, you know, if someone's goofing off, you'll know about it pretty soon, but that's not the point. And so we're trying to do it both with leadership and officers. Don't rush, slow down. There's no time limit. So I think that's a big deal.
Right. Right.
And there was a question about data that popped up, and I saw it, and I know it relates more to, let me just pull it back up. I'm sorry about that. Ethnic data collected on efficacy on this bias training. What I can tell you this is we tracked the numbers here in San Antonio. Starting in 2012, when the chief mandated that every officer get mental health training. And what we saw was a decrease in officer use of force and an increase in individuals being hospitalized for mental health. So what that told us was, whether it was correlation or causation based on definition of use of force, but what that told me as a trainer was, as officers were learning how to identify and de-escalate a crisis and knew what resources were available, the use of force started to go down because they didn't have to force an arrest anymore. They could actually offer another resource such as training. And then the hospitalizations rose on part of mental health. And I mean, those numbers just are staggering when you see it happen. It looked like a complete V when you looked at the data. So I think that's important to look at. Skills are diminishing skills, and they need to be brought back and revisited at least every 3 years, at least.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
As far as the racial bias training directly, as you asked, I don't have numbers in that. It's a very, very difficult thing to trace because it's very personal and it's a very difficult thing. It's more of is everything going more smoothly? Are you hearing less complaints from, are people feeling more? It's really a little difficult to see whether that exactly works, but I have been tracing the same trainings that they've been giving at corporations like Starbucks, Sephora. They've done these bias trainings, and I'm actually working with starting something corporate as well. We're doing this training for anyone who needs it, right? And Sephora wanted bias training and said, it's great that you teach it to us, but without these examples that you guys have, none of our courses in the past have had any actual follow-up. There's nothing to learn. We just explain bias and move on. And this is the first course we've seen where people are learning techniques and tactics not to do that. So in truth, I think it's very new, sadly, but we got to start somewhere, right? So hopefully there will be more info on that.
Real quick, I wanted to get Anne's question in here. She sent it to me. And she says, from a practical perspective, has Silk collected race and ethnic data that tracks the efficacy of the bias training? Have you seen a decrease in disparities in arrest? And I think we kind of just covered that. Do you feel like it was covered, Anne Marie? I don't know if her microphone's working all right. So does anybody else have any questions or would like to add to?
I thought it was thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Emery.
I think it would be important, Jim. I would love to get up there in front of leadership that, we could do some overview, training of what we do and let them, take a look at it. Because, it was real easy for me to identify where there is gaps in training, right? Especially when it came to barriers for treatment for people. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the environment of Spokane, what's available. I've tried to do as much research as I could. And you're actually doing, compared to a lot of places, guys, you are doing a good job, with what's available, especially some of the advanced courses that you're teaching. Spokane had one of the very first incidents of excited delirium that was dual responded with police and medical, and they were able to save a guy's life. And so what you're doing is advanced in some areas, but also some of the training as well is a bit antiquated, and I think could use some upgrade. There has to be collaboration within the community and law enforcement. And if that's where your barrier is, then I've been through those fights. I know what it takes to get through there. And it's just the ability to sit down and communicate with each other, and bring people to the table.
Yeah, I am happy to, I'm going to have to log off in a couple minutes, but I just wanted to say I'm happy to put you in an email with our council president and invite you to one of our study sessions, which would be in front of all of city council. And I can also put you in an email with the administration, the mayor and some of her staff that might be interested in hearing from you as well. So more than happy. I put my email in the chat, so feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to connect you with people. I know Council President Emily had emailed us, and Council President replied and said he's supportive of a training like this. So you do have support here, and you are right. I think that people do want to make change. So feel free to shoot me an email. I'm happy to connect you to the right people here. So
thank you, Councilwoman. Appreciate it.
And I appreciate your angle as well. I'm actually just going to keep thinking on it because we've been trying to find some bigger outside of the box solutions. So we'll just keep reflecting and hopefully hit the middle. So I appreciate that. Honesty is great.
Well, it's the only way I can work. So, hey, if I don't make friends along the way, it's fine. But, you get what you get with me. So
ditto. Big time.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do that. We can follow up. We'll send all of you our information. Our website is silked.org, silked.org, if you want to check it out as well.
I'm gonna throw your information up here real quick.
Oh, okay.
Let's see here.
And Anwar, I know you got something to say.
Yeah.
You got that look like you're dying to say something, man. Come on.
It's almost like you can read me. I don't know how that is.
Body language expert, man. Come on.
Are you guys seeing
yeah.
you guys seeing the contact info real quick here? Did that
Let's
come up?
see.
Oh wait,
No.
here, let me try. How about now? Oh wait, here we go. That work?
Yay. Oh, that's cool.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, go on, Anwar. I'm sorry.
All right, so I got a few things. So where do I start? So the councilwoman was talking about cahoots earlier, and I just wanted to let everybody know that the Seattle Fire Department for the past year has been doing a pilot program where they have paramedics and social workers paired up together and basically going out to these kind of calls. And one of the fire chief is the actual person that came up with this program. And so it was just released about a week and a half ago that they are going to continue this program, and they're going to bring in extra resources with this program. This program with we were talking about the speed of calls earlier. And so this program in Seattle, they are not interested in clearing a call real quickly. They're dedicated on spending as much time with the individual as possible to make sure that they get resources, help, and also to make the individual feel like the community cares for them. So I'm really looking at that program really hard. I'm reaching out to the fire chief to find out more information about that. So hopefully we can possibly bring that to Spokane here. Another thing that I wanted to ask Ernie and Athena, since you guys are professionals, and I just heard this word used, and it's a word that triggers a lot of people in the activist community, and that's the word excited delirium. I've heard from a lot of people that this is kind of a made-up word, and that the Medical Association and the Psychiatric Association don't actually approve of this terminology. And so I just want to hear more about that issue.
Sure. The term excited delirium was coined by Dr. Vincent DeMaio. And what he found through autopsies for people that died during a struggle for no other reason was that there was underlying medical issues that either were taking place or some type of drug use or combination of both. The excited delirium term has been accepted by the CDC. And whether you agree with the science or not, I can tell you I've had several interactions with individuals that go into a state of, now once they go into a state of excited delirium, there's a pretty good chance they're not going to live. Their heart is going to pump, it's going to use up the proteins it takes, and then it's basically going to lactic acid is going to freeze that heart up, and it's going to stop, and they're going to go into cardiac arrest. So with excited delirium, what you're going to see is an increase in body temperature. You're going to have individuals acting in a bizarre behavior with increased strength and the inability to deal with any type of de-escalation process. Verbal de-escalation is just not going to use. It's not going to work. The individual I had lately, patrol got a call for a female that was naked and running around. They found her. And 45 minutes, they called us, the mental health unit, to come out to say, hey, we got her wrangled up if y'all want to come get her. So as we get out there, the police van is parked in a parking lot, and there's about 6 officers standing opposite, about 50 yards away, talking around, just shooting the shit, man, not paying any attention to what's going on with the patient. I went and looked inside the van, and what I saw was she was handcuffed behind her back. Her eyes were rolled to the back of her head, and she was basically foaming at the mouth. I opened up the back of the van and went to touch her to get the handcuffs off. And other than a food item, that was probably one of the hottest things I've ever touched this individual. Immediately, there was a hospital, our university hospital trauma center was less than 5 minutes away. I made the decision to put her in my car and not call for an ambulance to get her to the hospital. I did call the hospital and let them know I was en route with a possible excited delirium, is the term that we were using down here because of the increase, because of all the indicators that were being shown. That was the only way I knew how to explain it. As I pulled up, they were already waiting outside with bags of ice and a cooling blanket. The first thing they did was take her temperature with the thermometer anally, and her temperature was 108.5. Her body was cooking. She was dying. She ended up going in coma for 3 days, and then I went back and was told she discharged. I asked what was in her labs after I got a HIPAA waiver signed on that, and I was told it was basically she had smoked some weed and took some prescription drugs, and her body reacted to that. That's just one. I've had several. So I know that in all medical communities, it's not always accepted. Here in Bexar County, it is, and we teach on it because we have determined through autopsies here that that is a possible cause of death. Now, can it be induced or triggered by a taser? That can definitely add to it. May not be the reason a person goes into excited delirium, but it can definitely be a factor of the acuity of what happens to the patient at that point. So I'm glad you brought that up. I actually teach the course on excited delirium as it was kind of broken down foundationally to me from Dr. DeMaio himself. Whether you believe it as a medical term, it's not accepted everywhere medically. So I'm glad you bring that up because this is a great discussion to have. The reason I think it's important to teach this is for an officer to understand that just don't look at a situation that this could be mental health related. This could be, you could have a patient in a medical emergency that's going to need help, and they're not just trying to resist arrest. They're not trying to pull away from you. They're inside, they are cooking and they are dying, and they're trying to fight for their life to cool down. So that's what we're seeing in some of these patients where the cause of death is ruled excited delirium. Getting back to your first point, Anwar, about the fire department and the clinician, that is exactly the hybrid system of what Cahoots is. And, you know, I love to put law enforcement in that mix because, again, statutorily, they're usually the ones that have to do the paperwork for the involuntary commitment if it's needed. Now, they don't always have to involve themselves in the call, but if they're needed, you know, for the paperwork, then you're going to have them. I know in California, we're going to be out there in a couple of weeks teaching. Their ambulance system is the one that does the transport, not the police, which I found very interesting here because in San Antonio, the police do the transport unless the individual is medically compromised. And I think I love that idea that they're doing out in California. The only problem with that is when you have a police department and a fire department that fall under the same municipality and they're constantly fighting for good contracts, sometimes they fight against each other, right? So we always have to try to bridge the gap there to get them to work together. You would think they would because they all work for the same city or county, but they're all fighting for benefits, trying to get, you know, whoever tries to go to the table first might get a better deal while the other one sits back and waits, hoping they're going to get the better deal. So there's politics behind this, unfortunately. And the people that lose out are the taxpayers that really need the help and resources from the first responders. Sorry, I had to go on there, but I wanted to address your questions.
No, that's excellent. The first time I heard about excited delirium was in the Rodney King case, and so I've tried to understand it as best I could. So I really appreciate you giving me more understanding of it, and the fact that tasers can also be a trigger for this is good to know as well. And so I believe that in a lot of the cases where I hear this term excited delirium, I think it's been used as code language for officers to justify their actions. And so to understand the medical aspect of this is also good to understand and know. So thank you so much, Ernie. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and a way that you can mitigate some of that code language, I love, man, and why I love, man, that you're talking like this, is to put in policies and procedures that direct the officer on how to handle these types of incidences, right? Because we've seen it here in San Antonio. One of them was, if you believe a person has taken drugs, is holding a weapon, and you're having to deal with that, then you don't use a taser because they could fall on a knife, that they're holding. And we had to revisit all these different implementations of use of force until they finally came up with a very good definition and policy that we follow now. So I'm glad to bring policy and procedure with me that we follow here. Everything that we do has been vetted by Bobcat Consulting. He is a consultant out of Washington, D.C. He is a chief in 3 different places and was a deputy chief in Washington, D.C. Metro. So we always use a third party to vet our policies and procedures. And I would love, if you need us up there and we need to review some maybe outdated policies and procedures, we can do that. We update ours quite often here.
And
well, okay.
No, I just wanted to say, in the spirit of true honesty, right? While I think I've talked to Ernie about excited delirium, and I have a slightly different perspective on it. But what I came to understand from what Ernie was saying, and I think this is important to point out, because I don't think this is a blanket statement, is in Texas, this is apparently understood by the medical community and police as a term that means something, right? Ernie shows up, they have ice packs. They know what that is. I have always thought it's a police term for hysteria. Like this person's just hysterical, right? Because to me, it seems like Asperger's, where it's an umbrella statement for a lot of possibly different forms of things that could fall into it, right? So if your state uses this terminology and it can be used to help saying this is what's happening, I think that's good. If it's not something you use, it's not a course that we're teaching outside of Texas unless people want it and it matches their medical community's words, right? Because the same thing. So I think in Texas, definitely, and if more places use this as a term to communicate, maybe that works, but I do think we need to be careful there.
Can I introduce Keonta too? She's from the NAACP in Spokane, and since she was a little late, I want to make sure that any concerns or questions that she has are heard before we conclude the meeting.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry to have come on late. I am not feeling well, and I wanted to hop on anyway, but now I'm actually going to hop off. If you could send me the link, and I will watch the entire Zoom post this, and then I'm sure I'll have questions. Can I send it to you then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure you get everything.
All right. Thank you guys so much.
I hope you feel better.
I hope you feel better soon.
You, Keonta.
I hope so too, because I got too much to do.
Yeah.
All right.
You're important.
Thank you. Have a good day, you guys.
Thank you.
You too. Thank
I feel like
Sorry, guys. My kids needed me for a minute.
No problem. Well, it looks like we're left with our usual gang here. Let's see here. Does anybody else have any other questions or anything like that you want to add to it?
No, I just wanted to say, Anwar, I don't know what you have going on with community groups, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. Ernie and I could jump on, and I'd like to listen and see what you guys are trying to do as well, and then see if it matches up or if we can support it or have some ideas. So happy to join any meetings or calls.
Well, under full disclosure, I am a City of Spokane Human Rights Commissioner. So I'm actively involved in a lot of different community groups that would love to hear you guys' presentation. And so, yeah, definitely. I would love any help from you guys, and I'm really eagerly waiting for you guys to come up here because I believe that your expertise is definitely warranted, and I think that a lot of the problems that we're having here um, deal with the police and government agencies viewing our demands as basically these tree huggers just want to change things. And so to have you guys with Ernie's background in law enforcement and yours with the Green Berets, it will really kind of shine a light on the need for change. And that it's just not us tree huggers wanting this. It's actual people that are actually in the industry that are working on changing it. So I'm going to do everything possible to lobby our city officials to have you guys come up here. I think this is such an important conversation that you guys are having, and I would just like to offer, if I can help you guys in any way, I would love to do so.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of stuff that can be addressed with you guys coming up here. So if we can get more people involved, and I don't know how much of time you have available, but yeah, if we could try to get some more things put together where people can meet you, that'd be great.
We're going to be in the Pacific Northwest training already election week and possibly the week after, which makes it a little easier to jump around. So if either of those first 2 weeks in November, I know it's a little soon, but it would be able to kind of get there a little sooner and maybe even combine costs for all of us to make it a little easier. So happy to do that.
Awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
I think that that's a great idea, and I think that the community and just everyone involved from every aspect of this situation feels the need. There's an urgency to move forward on things that will make our community better for everyone. So I think that there will be a lot of interest, even pretty soon. And I think that this training really excites me because it leaves an opportunity for the policy changes that a lot of our community and our officials are leaning towards and moving towards already, but that may be blocked otherwise by not having this this kind of bridge in between those two things.
You know, Alexis, this training excites me, and I'll tell you why. Because I was one of the officers that caused groups like you to come together and have concern. Okay, I was that guy. I was assigned to gang units and tactical units. I was not the guy you wanted to show up to take a report from, because that wasn't fun for me, right? Although that was expected of me, that was not fun for me. The training that changed my entire career path was this training right here. And I got to see the heart of human beings for the first time that came in front of us and said, hey, we matter. We count on you. We expect you to help us. And it doesn't always need to be sexy, right? It needs to be real. And when I had the aha moment that Athena was talking about, it changed my career path. And if it happened for somebody like me, it can happen for other officers. And they just need to hear the truth. And, you know, I'm willing to be very vulnerable about my story and how that came to be for me. Because, again, I was a hard nut to crack when it came to mental health training. I would have never embraced it on my own. But I'm glad that had to take place in my life for me to get where I am now. So I'm not ashamed of where I came from, but I am proud of where I'm at today.
Well, I don't judge you on that. My husband is a veteran, so I know a little bit about that process. Thank you for being here and for being candid and honest. I really like it.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
That is the foundation of what we're trying to bring with us. So thank you for saying that. It's just the conversation changes when everybody feels like they can be honest. So I think it's important. So, thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I think unless anybody else has any last questions or anything.
No.
I thought it was great. Thank you so much for all the information.
We can't hear you.
I'm gonna have to run a network cable over to Anne Marie's house.
Oh, thank you.
Now you're
She's saying thank you. Okay, thank you.
How about sign language? Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll talk with you guys later. We'll follow up with you. And one way or another, I think you guys need to connect with Kate and pursue that. And I'm sure we'll have some emails going back and forth. And hopefully we are recording this. So hopefully we'll have some more people that'll be watching this and they'll have some questions. And we'll try to figure out a way to get those questions to you guys one way or another.
Fantastic. Thank you again, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.
See you later.
You too,
You too.
Anwar.